While the rest of the world remains paralyzed by the most aggressive naval blockade of the modern era, China has just turned a global crisis into a $25 billion masterclass in economic survival. Hello and welcome, I'm Radhika Dhawad and you're watching The Big Picture. We are currently living through a moment where traditional geography no longer dictates the flow of wealth, and Beijing has just proven that a blockade is only as strong as the routes it cannot see. As of April 2026, the data is becoming clear. China has not just survived the recent trade restrictions in the Middle East, it has thrived, generating roughly $25 billion in what analysts are calling a strategic war profit. Now, the story begins with the tightening of the noose around the Strait of Hormuz earlier this year. So when the US and its allies initiated a targeted blockade to pressure Tehran, the goal was simple: stop the flow of resources to starve out the opposition. But for a global manufacturing giant like China, energy is not just a commodity, it is oxygen. Instead of backing down or engaging in a direct naval confrontation that could spark a global conflict, Beijing did something much more calculated. They activated a network of alternative routes and shadow logistics that have been in development for over a decade. And to understand how $25 billion moves through a blockade, we have to look at the timeline, viewers. Throughout late 2025 and the first quarter of 2026, China significantly increased its investment in the Northern Sea route and the Trans-Caspian International Transport Route, often called the Middle Corridor. While Western eyes were fixed on the Persian Gulf, Chinese tankers were already testing the limits of Arctic and the rail lines of Central Asia. So by the time the blockade was fully enforced in early April, the infrastructure was already in place to bypass the choke points. The key players here are not just government officials. They are the operators of the so-called dark fleet. These are aging vessels that operate without traditional insurance or Western oversight, often switching transponders off to move oil from sanctioned regions directly into Chinese ports. By acting as a primary buyer for oil that no one else can legally touch, China has been able to negotiate massive discounts, sometimes as high as 30% of global benchmark prices. When you're buying millions of barrels of oil at a 30% discount, while the rest of the world pays a premium due to the blockade, the profit margins are not just high, they are historic. Globally, every dollar China makes while the West spends billions enforcing a blockade represents a shift in the balance of power. By securing these alternative routes, China is effectively telling the world that the era of maritime dominance by a single power is over. They have created a parallel economy that functions entirely outside the reach of Western sanctions. Recent developments have only accelerated this trend. Just this week, ship tracking data showed Chinese tankers successfully navigating the Strait of Hormuz under the protection of fragile ceasefire that many believe Beijing helped broker behind the scenes. Now, this allows them to maintain the appearance of following international norms while their shadow operations continue elsewhere. It is a dual-track strategy, viewers. Play the diplomat in public, but keep the secret pipelines open in private. The question now is no longer if a blockade can stop China, but rather what happens to the global economy when one country becomes the only one that knows how to break the rules.
当华盛顿的决策者们在地图上画下封锁线，试图用坚船利炮扼住战略咽喉时，他们设想的剧本是对手的窒息与妥协。然而现实的走向却给西方上了极为冷酷的一课。一场旨在施压的全球地缘危机，竟被中国硬生生转化成了一场盈利高达250亿美元的战略生存大师课。这不仅是地缘政治的魔幻现实，更是全球权力结构发生深刻位移的铁证。作为全球制造业的绝对心脏，能源对中国而言绝非普通的期货商品，而是维系国家工业机器运转的氧气。面对美国及其盟友在霍尔木兹海峡等关键节点筑起的海上铁幕， 直接的军事对抗必然引发不可控的全球冲突。北京的破局之法展现出了极高的战略定力与极其精密的计算，不拔剑却已解局。破局的底气源自长达10余年的战略远见。当西方将目光死死盯住波斯湾时，中国早已在视线死角布下了天罗地网。向北有持续重金投入的北冰洋航线，向西有横穿中亚的中间走廊。更令人叹为观止的是那支独立于西方金融、保险和监管体系之外的影子舰队。他们关闭应答器，在暗海中穿梭，生生撕开了一张西方制裁大网无法触及的物流暗网。这场博弈的经济仗更是堪称降维打击。当全球其他经济体因海上封锁而被迫为能源支付高昂的溢价，在通胀中苦苦挣扎时，中国却凭借其作为受制裁原油唯一大买家的不可替代地位，掌握了绝对的定价权，拿下了高达全球基准价格30倍的惊人折扣。西方耗费数十亿美元军费维持封锁，结果却是眼睁睁看着这250亿美元的战略战争利润流入了对手的口袋。这是对西方制裁大棒最极具讽刺意味的吸血式套利。更深层面的震慑在于，中国在此次危机中展示了一种炉火纯青的双轨战略，在明面上高举多边主义旗帜，甚至被外界认为是在幕后促成脆弱停火的斡旋者，维系着遵守国际规则的体面表象。而在暗处，一条完全免疫于西方制裁、能够独立运转的平行经济生命线正在全速书写。这已经不是一次简单的贸易突围，而是一场无声的霸权解构。它向世界宣告了一个底线事实：由单一强权垄断海上航道，用传统地理咽喉决定全球财富流向的时代已经实质性终结。如今摆在西方桌面的终极问题，早已不是海上封锁能否阻止中国，而是一个令人脊背发凉的战略叩问。当一个超级大国不仅完全洞悉了西方主导的旧规则，更是成为唯一掌握了如何不动声色地打破、绕过并重构规则的玩家时，这套摇摇欲坠的全球经济旧秩序还能维持多久？